The Dolphins ramped the party up with their first day of pads on Tuesday and endured a potentially significant loss due to injury. We're exploring all that and more here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, an NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today on the show, first day pads. Locked in. Sounded like it was a competitive practice. Have some notes as far as standouts. We have an injury that is kind of an awkward intersection of a skill set that I don't know how well you're equipped to pivot versus a position room that I think you actually have a significant amount of depth in as a whole. And then Minkah Fitzpatrick spoke to the media yesterday, right around the time where we ran yesterday's show after yesterday's practice. But he said something that caught my attention. We're going to get into that as well here on the show. Let's start with this Ashtyn Davis development. Ashtyn Davis goes down today at practice. He, of course, one of the safety additions the Dolphins made in their process to totally kind of wipe the slate clean with their safety room and build it from scratch. It was Yafitu Melifonwu, Ashtyn Davis, Dante Trader, second-year player Patrick McMorris, Elijah Campbell back on another one-year deal, Minkah Fitzpatrick acquired via trade. Now, Ashtyn Davis, I think if you were to ask me about his value within the role, I do think he's the third most important piece that the Dolphins have, where obviously this goes Minkah Fitzpatrick, Yafitu Melifonwu with the versatility that he brings to the table, but is another player that has durability questions. Ashtyn Davis is not as diverse as those other two players, but he has top-end range on the back end, and he's got plus ball skills. Those are things that typically play well in deep coverages. If you told me that Davis was the predominant high post player in the Dolphins when they want to go middle of the field closed, which is one high free safety over the top, Davis probably would have been my presumption if the Dolphins were going to go with three safety sets and play other guys low in the box, like Melifonwu for what he can do from a matchups perspective, or same for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, we don't know what the terms of this injury are, but he left practice. The feedback was he was speaking to and getting consoled by a number of prominent figures on the team, including Anthony Weaver, Mike McDaniel, and some of the players. And then he was back out in practice with a boot on his lower leg and on crutches. It's not a great sign. Right. And as of me sitting down to record this, I kind of hung out for a little bit, seeing if we were going to get some kind of injury update on this regard, but haven't seen anything come through yet. I'm sure it'll come up and ping the headlines as soon as we're done recording here, but that's okay. I've made peace with it. But I don't think you have a player in the room whose skill set you ideally want to play there at the either for what their strengths and weaknesses are, or at the expense of trying to capitalize the versatility around the rest of the field. And you do live in a world where you now have Minkah Fitzpatrick, who has played deep in Pittsburgh, but the impact has not been what it was before. And it's not a coincidence that that has come in large part because of how much he's just had to play deep. So you have a player that can do it. But if you're going to get the most out of Minkah Fitzpatrick as a player, and please don't sit here and ask if you don't do that, if he's going to ask for a trade or anything like that. Minkah talked yesterday, right? He said he wants to be here long term. We'll talk about Minkah before the end of the show again. But it puts you in an interesting conflict. Now, there are a few stylistic players that if you were going to go outside of the current roster, if you wanted to pursue a veteran player who is predominantly a high post type of player, I do think you have a few options on free agency that are still left. They would not be cheap. I think the top two names that have lived in that role in some way, shape, or form throughout the prime of their career, and I don't think either one of these players is close to the prime of their career anymore. But just to invoke the names, and I don't think I would agree to sign either of these two players, but we're presenting all of our options that we have right now with the presumption that the Ashtyn Davis injury is as bad as the initial reports and the reaction to the player from the coaches and the players on the field made it seem as though it was. And maybe it's a bone break and he'll be back in 8 weeks and he'll only miss a few weeks to start the season and they won't have to do anything, right? We don't know yet. But Justin Simmons and Marcus Williams are the two players who have predominantly played high safety, playing from depth type players that are still out there that could potentially make some sense for the kind of role that you were maybe expecting Ashtyn Davis to fill. Do I think either one of them is a downgrade from Ashtyn Davis? No, but the financial commitments element of it is going to be dramatically different. And I that's where I don't know how far the Dolphins are willing to go. Because Daniel Brunskill, we don't have the conditions in terms of the Mike Hilton and Jack Jones contracts yet. But I did see over the cap put in the Daniel Brunskill terms of his contract that he signed with Miami a week ago today. And it was a veteran salary benefit contract, which means you get whatever the minimum salary is for the amount of years that you are tenured. And then you actually get like a little bit of a rebate and kickback against the cap as a motivation to keep veteran players once they become tenured past a certain age point to continue to be attractive options to be on teams. So he's going to count against the salary cap for $1.03 million. He's a minimum salary player, Daniel Brunskill. And in a perfect world, he doesn't play because I do think he is a better depth player than he is a potential long-term solution at one of your spots inside. But we look at these three signings, and obviously the Dolphins have cap space because of what they did with Minkah Fitzpatrick. They could go out and sign another player or two. Make sure my phone's not blowing up. Okay. Nothing big. That's where we're standing now with the Ashtyn Davis development. You could make a move. Would I expect them to make the splash move? No. And I think you'll probably find out that both Jack Jones and Mike Hilton were probably incrementally above it minimum. I think there's probably some significant amount of dollars invested there. I don't think either one of those guys signed for $5-6 million or anything like that, but that's probably the price point where you get to play ball with the Justin Simmonses and the Marcus Williams of the world. I just don't think it's going to happen. So that's Ashtyn Davis. Big time bummer. It is a part of the game, though. I mean, I'm sitting here reading Jalen Jones for the Colts got carted off. Hollywood Brown got carted off. Marcus Hairston, the Bills' first-round corner, got helped off with a knee injury. This is happening to every team across the league. I promise you this is not just a Miami Dolphins thing that's happening right now. It's unfortunate, but it's a part of the game and getting calluses on these guys and get ready to play football. Talk about some of the notes from today's practice, including a continuation of a trend that I saw while I was down at camp last week. We're going to get into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Listen, we've all been there. You log on early. You're waiting for the concert tickets to go on sale. Only somehow you lose your spot. Maybe your internet bumps out. You lose your spot in line. and then you miss that show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, so you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. So if you're tired of endless scrolling to try to find the best deal, you can let Game Time Zone Deals pick the best seats in your section for you. They offer panoramic views from your seats and all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees when you put the tickets into your cart. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last-minute tickets for the lowest prices, guaranteed. Sounded like pads came on. The Dolphins kind of leaned into the physicality a little bit. They got some pads thumping throughout the course of the day today. Sounded like you were hearing and seeing some more of the push up front on the ground. That's been kind of a renewed focus for the Dolphins after what last year was and was not in many ways. And some guys earning dirty yards. Ollie Gordon picking up some first downs in short yardage situations. Alexander Madison running physical. Sounds like that has been a persistent thing. But Patrick Paul, and this was one of the observations I had in my week down there as well. And I tried not to do like winners and losers and all that. I want to get a little bit of data, right? Like a significant sample size other than, hey, here's 4 practices without pads, right? Pads came back on. They obviously practiced again yesterday after the day off on Sunday. Patrick Paul, I think, has made some significant strides with his hand usage and in the O-line, D-line one-on-one reps that the Dolphins had on Tuesday. Patrick was credited with, hey, maybe there's a hold in here, but pitched a shutout as far as his protection, and he was looking like a dramatically improved player from the time that I had around him. And then hearing even more positive reports once the pads come on, where it becomes a little bit easier to maybe kind of set your hands on a body because you've got something to grab onto now, right? Like if you keep it inside the breastplate, you're usually not going to get called for holding unless you're pulling guys back into you while you're extended away from your frame. And that's what Pat does really well. And I think a lot of his technical stuff ties back to his hands and how he punches and utilizes his length. I thought he looked improved in that regard, and it sounded like he had a great day again today. So I feel comfortable saying this. I think Patrick Paul is going to be a sufficient level starter this year. There's a ceiling to be higher. The question is, how many times does he continue to make incremental leaps throughout the next 8 months? How tangible are they? How much do you feel them? But my expectation for Patrick Paul is that you feel a player who is at minimum a sufficient level starter. And then you have the chance to potentially have a sending group inside next to him with Jonas Savaianaya playing next to him. And James Daniels talked to the media after practice today, said either today or tomorrow, he's supposed to meet with his doctor and is expecting to get his full clearance for no restrictions, no snap counts, no rotating first team stuff, which is kind of what happened in the first week of camp was he'd go out there for a team period and then he'd be off while the rest of the ones or your perceived ones would be back out there. Spoiler alert, the Dolphins are paying James Daniels $8 million a year. He's going to be a starter, right? As long as he's healthy. So he had like this, it felt like it was a pitch count almost for James Daniels. But he said to the media today, expectation is either today or tomorrow he's going to meet with the doctor, and then it's going to be full systems go, which is great that you can collect those reps. And you're talking about a player who's getting recovery by the beginning of August, which is all that you could have hoped for. And I'm sure the Dolphins will probably still be smart with him early on, but it's nice to know that as far as medically speaking is concerned, he's where he needs to be to suit up and play a football game. On the defensive side of the ball, it continues to be Willie Gay's reign of terror. He was awesome last week when I was down and continues to flash and make plays in a bunch of different ways, whether that's as a pressure player, whether that's as an off-ball linebacker. I think the worst thing you could have done, and Willie Gay admitted this yesterday, is look at the New Orleans Saints tape of Willie Gay and assume that's who he is as a player, because I think they grossly misused him. I think they grossly underused him. He went from Kansas City to New Orleans hoping to kind of have a splash opportunity, and I don't think they knew what to do with him. I don't think they knew how to utilize him. And Willie Gay said himself, we got to week 10 and I'm playing 10 reps a game. Admittedly, yeah, like I had to humble myself after the season because I kind of, so what's the point? The team's bad. They're not winning games. I'm not playing and being used. And you could tell he's come into camp this year with a chip on his shoulder. And I know some people would hear a player say, hey, I had to humble myself. Minkah Fitzpatrick yesterday talked about removing the ego of the game. I think it's really interesting to listen to a lot of these new players talk and the kind of the central common themes, and then apply that to what you perceive some of the problems to be for the Dolphins. And it's very easy to see why the Dolphins gravitated towards some of these players. But Willie Gay talked about, just trying to do my job. I think we got potentially the best linebacker room in football. And if Willie Gay plays like Kansas City Chiefs version of Willie Gay, I'd probably be inclined to agree with him. And that's what he's looked like in the first week of camp. He's an interior pressure player from depth. He can walk up on the edge of the line of scrimmage. He can walk out over number 3 and pressure in that regard. He could play weak side and chase the ball down and just be a pursuit player. He's got some range and is dropping into zones. Kind of think about what they did with Tyus Bowser last year. Tyus Bowser, of course, formerly in Baltimore. Some of those edge defender zone drops with simulated pressure, like Willie Gay can do that. And he's buzzed into flats and taken away throwing windows outside the numbers in the first week of camp. So I'm really excited about what the continued evolution for Willie Gay is going to look like as a player who has the chip on his shoulder, had to humble himself after last season, and is just like a energizer bunny of energy too. That's the other thing is, he comes out of the training facility and he's a screaming demon and he's all fired up for practice, and it's every day. He's just tireless energy, and I think it's very easy to like that about him, and you feel him from an energy perspective and you feel him from a impact of play perspective. It's a great combination for a guy who is amongst these slew of bets that the Dolphins are taking, and not all of them are going to hit, right? Like, you'll have some unfortunate turns of events with players who don't perform. You'll have some unfortunate turns of events with injuries, like potentially what we have with Ashtyn Davis. I don't believe we still have any updates on that regard. But you are going to have your hits as well. And that's what you saw last year was what the Dolphins did with Calais Campbell and Jonnu Smith and Aaron Brewer and Jordan Brooks. And Jordan Poyer was not a hit, right? If you have another offseason in which you have more hits than losses, I think this team will be positioned fairly well. And I don't know if you want to put Patrick Paul into that bucket of bets that they placed because Teron Armstead left versus, well, they made the investment in 24, so it's a different story. However you want to classify it, I get it. That's fine. Minkah Fitzpatrick talked yesterday. Kind of set the record straight. We're getting into that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. This episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back, so fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all of the overreactions that we all live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy this year. Me and Locked On Dolphins are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran, making your 1 millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over the next 28 days, starting on August 4th. Gives you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. Stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. So Minkah Fitzpatrick started with a statement when he talked to the media yesterday. And he talked about the reasons why he did and did not talk. He talked about wanting to focus on this year's team, didn't want to talk about the trade and the mechanics of how it all went down, did not want to talk about past coaches, very clearly talking about Brian Flores. And from what I understand, that was a big part of the apprehension to talk before things kind of got settled, was not wanting to reignite those conversations and create negative talking points around the team and distractions. Talking about things that are water under the bridge, that are no longer relevant to anybody other than those who want to sit there on the abacus and keep score for wins and losses, for whose fault it is that the Dolphins are in year 7 of the rebuild and it's supposed to be the glory years, right? That's not the interesting thing that Minkah Fitzpatrick said, though. The interesting thing that Minkah said, he was asked if he could see himself or if he wants to stay in Miami long term. I'm going to give you the full quote, and there's 2 reasons why I think this quote is particularly interesting. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like I said earlier, I'm really liking the energy and the direction that this is going. I think the culture of this locker room is one that wants to win and win now, but it's also something that I want to earn. I know it was reported that I wanted a new contract, but I just wanted to know that I was going to be here for more than a season, and I got that. Now I'm going to go out there and play all-pro, Pro Bowl level, and hopefully earn the respect of my teammates in the organization to have that long-term contract. This is interesting to me in more ways than one. What's first interesting to me is Minkah did not get new years on this deal. He did not get future guarantees in this deal. We got cash moved up from 26 to 25. And you got a upfront payment for the vast majority of the season so they could reallocate the money from a salary cap perspective and create more salary cap space. There's no guarantees added for 2026. So with that being the case, it makes me wonder what the continuing conversation is between Drew Rosenhaus, the Dolphins, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's also asked what conversations he had with Anthony Weaver, Chris Greer, and Mike McDaniel when he got here about, and Marcel Louis-Jacques asked this question, I thought it was a great one, about what they needed from him as a player and a leader. And he talked about there being a standard that they're trying to set, and it's to play smart, uninhibited, unselfish football. Take the ego out of the game. And I foil that and what standard they want to set, and Minkah's approach to it. And Minkah's approach also being, I want to earn a long-term contract. I want to earn being here. I got my peace of mind, and now I'm going to go play at the level that I think that I'm capable of and hopefully earn the respect of my teammates in the organization to have a long-term commitment. You foil all of that versus the problematic trend of player X is acquired by the Dolphins and gets a big contract with several years of guarantees, point blank period, before they step foot on the football field and play an official snap. It's interesting to me that this is the tone. It's interesting to me that this is the mentality. And I don't think every player that you could possibly trade for in the history of mankind would be on board to play it this way. But as we said yesterday, this is why I think how they handled it organizationally was a win, to not fall into the same traps that they had in the past. Because it's, Minkah, we need to see it. We want you to earn it. We want you to earn the respect of your teammates. We want you, and he talked about, the value of your own individual play being one thing, but getting to know your teammates to create trust on the back end. And respectfully, I reflect on the player that got sent to Pittsburgh in the transaction to bring Minkah Fitzpatrick back, and I hear the opposite stuff. And Minkah, to his credit, also talked about, he was asked, Joe Schad asked, what's the biggest difference between the player you are today and the player that came to Miami in 2018? And Minkah talked about emotional intelligence. And he talked about learning how to communicate to people and, just as importantly, how not to communicate to people. And I felt that was probably as close as he got to the Brian Flores Miami Dolphins stuff. And he asked up front, like, I would hope that you guys respect that. Like, I'm not here to talk about that. I want to talk about this team and talk about this opportunity. So this quote to me was interesting, that he wants to earn the right and earn the respect of his teammates in the organization to get the long-term contract, but also feels as though the adjustment that they made gave him peace of mind that he's not just going to be here as a one and done. And, I assume this is part of the Dolphins and Drew Rosenhaus and Minkah all coming to an amicable compromise and then saying, we're going to play nice in the sandbox. We're going to let this year play itself out. And then we're all going to make recalibrate and get ourselves lined up and talk extension after you're here and after you put in time and after you perform and play at whatever level you're going to perform at. And then we'll have those conversations. And it can go one of two ways. Minkah can ball out and it could cost the Dolphins money, or Minkah might not play to the all-pro Pro Bowl level that he's used to playing and acclimated at playing at, because he's a player who's getting towards the later chapters of his career. He's probably at the tail end of his prime right now. And some of the downturn in production, presumably the concern in Pittsburgh, was that he's not the same player. Well, is he not the same player? Was it not the same role? And is it how you used him? That's this year. Before we make the big financial clarity and commitment, we want to have the clarity. We want to have some proof of concept. We want you to earn it. We want you to go out and show yourself to be the pillar that you're asking to be. It's all interesting stuff. That is going to do it for us here today on the show. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. I am cautiously keeping my eyes out to see if we get any injury updates. I am cautiously keeping my eyes out to see if maybe we get an update on the Dolphins free agent visit that happened yesterday with Noah Fant. Team had him in for a visit yesterday. All that stuff. Keep your eyes peeled. As we get it, we'll react to it. Keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as well for checking out the show. I'm out of here. Go Fins.